An Iranian general woke up today and told the press, live on air, no port in the region will be safe. We're not talking about Hormuz. We're not talking about Iranian ports. We're talking about Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Kuwait City, Ras Tanura, the largest oil export terminal on the planet. All of them, simultaneously. And the most disturbing thing isn't the threat, it's what happened after it. America didn't respond. No press conference, no counter-threat, no official statement addressing this directly. Total silence. But there's a third thing, and it's exactly what all the coverage is ignoring. A country whose supreme leader was killed, whose nuclear facilities were bombed, and whose military infrastructure was destroyed over 46 days of war, manages to stand before reporters and say it will expand the conflict to the entire Gulf, to the Red Sea, to every maritime route that moves energy across the planet. How is this possible? How does a country in this condition have such confidence? One word: China. Not because China told Iran to say that, not because China is openly fighting alongside Iran, but because China has been doing something far more sophisticated and far more consequential than fighting. And understanding exactly what China has been doing is the key to understanding why this war has reached the point it has today. Let's anchor this in verifiable facts with Western sources. The Wall Street Journal reported this week that Saudi Arabia is pressuring Washington to abandon the blockade and return to negotiations, fearing that the measure will provoke Iran to retaliate against other critical shipping routes. The country the United States claims to be protecting, the country America has told the world it is defending by confronting Iran's regional aggression, is now asking America to stop what it is doing because it is making things worse for Saudi Arabia. This is an extraordinary reversal. CNN reported that U.S. intelligence has confirmed that China is preparing to send weapons to Iran, specifically manpads, shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Exactly the type of weapon that shot down a US F-15E over Iran on April 3rd. China is reportedly routing these shipments through third countries to mask their origin. When Trump was asked about this at the White House, he said he doubted it. His own intelligence agencies confirmed it. His own president publicly doubted it. This gap between what the U.S. intelligence community knows and what the U.S. president is willing to say publicly is a silence in itself. And it is a silence that China is counting on. Satellite imagery-based ship tracking data, which monitors vessels from the shadow fleet that have turned off their transponders, has recorded 11.7 million barrels of Iranian crude oil transferred to China since the war began on February 28th. What is confirmed? Oil is flowing. What is disputed? Whether China is arming Iran. What no one explains: how a country under a U.S. blockade exported more oil during the war than before it. And here is the number that changes everything. Before the war, in February 2026, Iran exported approximately 1.68 million barrels of oil per day. In March, the most intense month of the conflict, with the Strait of Hormuz partially closed and the world watching oil prices skyrocket, Iran exported 1.84 million barrels per day, more than before the war. In April, with the U.S. blockade in effect, 1.71 million barrels per day, still above the pre-war average. How? How is a country under U.S. military attack, with its supreme leader dead, its air defenses destroyed, and its ports under blockade, exporting more oil than before the conflict began? The answer is that China has spent a decade building a specific system to survive exactly this kind of U.S. pressure. Payments in yuan, outside the SWIFT system. Second-tier Chinese banks operating outside the financial network on which Western sanctions depend. So-called teapot refineries, which process sanctioned oil without asking questions. Ships from the shadow fleet. Vessels that turn off their automatic identification systems, sail without transmitting their location, and deliver cargo to Chinese refiners. Iranian oil stored in bonded warehouses and floating storage facilities in Asian waters. China built this relationship over a decade specifically so that when a moment like this arrived, when America tried to cut Iran off from its oil revenues, the system would hold up. And the system held up. The blockade Trump announced has put pressure on Iranian port operations, but it cannot stop China-Iran oil trade. Because that trade was specifically engineered to be beyond the reach of American enforcement tools. Iran is being paid. The coffers remain full. And it is this money that gives Iran the economic breathing room to make threats that would otherwise be suicidal. Mohsen Rezai, former commander of the Revolutionary Guards, was explicit in what he wrote on social media. Iran has untapped levers to counter the blockade. Untapped levers. This language is deliberate. He is not saying that Iran has used everything and is running out of options. He is saying that Iran has kept things in reserve, and the things Iran has kept in reserve are now being put on the table as a threat against every port in the region. But this should come as no surprise to anyone familiar with the historical pattern. The mechanism we are seeing is identical to what happened in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. In all these conflicts, the United States tried to defeat a lesser adversary militarily, while a greater power, the Soviet Union, then other regional actors, kept that adversary economically alive and militarily supplied behind the scenes. The result was always the same. American military superiority did not translate into surrender because the enemy had a lifeline that American air and naval power could not sever. What China is doing with Iran in 2026 is the modern, enhanced version of this pattern, but with one critical difference. It is being done with financial and logistical instruments that did not exist in the 1960s or 1980s. The shadow fleet, yuan payments, teapot refiners, these are 21st century tools that make Western economic pressure progressively less effective. And Iran has played this card before, within this very conflict. When it closed the Strait of Hormuz in February, it allowed China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan to pass through the strait while blocking Western ships. This created exactly the kind of division Iran wanted, countries choosing to negotiate directly with Tehran rather than aligning with the American position. The strategy is not new. The system that makes it possible is. And now, in April 2026, that same logic is being applied on a larger scale. Iran isn't threatening Hormuz, it's threatening the entire Gulf. Not because it has more military capability than it did a week ago. Iran has been significantly degraded militarily, but because its strategic confidence continues to grow. And that confidence has an address: Beijing. The layer that no one is discussing is not military. It is a diplomatic wedge, and it will hit you directly in the pocket. When the Iranian general said, "No port in the region will be safe," Iran wasn't speaking primarily to America. America already knows what Iran's capabilities are. America has been at war with Iran for 46 days. America knows the missiles, the drones, the fast attack boats, the mines in the water. Iran was speaking to a different audience. It was speaking to Saudi Arabia, to the Emirates, to Kuwait, to Qatar. To every Gulf state that has a port, a refinery, an oil terminal, a desalination plant, a financial district that depends on the normal functioning of the global economy. The message was, if the American blockade continues, we'll make this your problem too. Not America's problem, your problem. Your ports, your oil shipments, your economies. And that message creates exactly the uncertainty Iran wants to create. Because Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Kuwait are watching the same thing you're watching. They see Iran threatening every port in the region. They see America saying nothing specific about it. And they're asking themselves, will America protect us if Iran acts on that threat? Or is the American focus so consumed by direct confrontation with Iran over the nuclear issue that our ports, our tanks, our oil terminals are secondary concerns? If Saudi Arabia and the Emirates start making separate deals with Iran to protect their own ports, if they start moving away from American policy to ensure their own security, America loses the coalition it needs to make the blockade economically effective. Iran wins without firing a single additional shot. Now the connection to your daily life. If Iran acts on this threat, if the Houthis in Yemen, Iran's most active proxy in this conflict, resume attacks on ships in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait simultaneously with Iranian operations in the Gulf, we're talking about two simultaneous choke points affecting between 30 and 40% of global maritime trade, an economic event without modern precedent. This isn't abstract. This is the price of gasoline. It's the energy bill. It's the inflation of everything that crosses the ocean to reach you. And here is the deeper dimension, the one no one is asking about directly. The American strategy to end this war has no China component. The blockade targets Iran. The negotiations target Iran. The ceasefire framework targets Iran. But the reason Iran was able to hold its ground for 46 days, the reason oil revenues kept flowing, the reason the arms pipeline kept running, the reason Iran could sit in Islamabad for 21 hours and walk away without a deal, is not purely Iranian resilience. It is Chinese support. Trump threatened a 50% tariff on China if it transferred weapons to Iran. He made that threat while publicly saying he doubted China was doing so. You cannot credibly threaten a consequence for something you publicly say you don't believe is happening. China heard that. Iran heard that. Everyone heard that. A strategy that does not address Chinese support is a strategy trying to win a game while ignoring one of the players. And that player, China, is not a passive observer. China pressured Iran to accept the ceasefire. China is in daily diplomatic contact with both sides. China is buying Iranian oil. China is preparing to arm Iran. China met with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov this week, and Putin is planning to visit China in the weeks surrounding Trump's own planned visit to Beijing in May. Russia and China are coordinating their positions on this war at the highest diplomatic levels, and America is treating them like spectators. The ceasefire expires in 6 days, on April 21st, and the sequence of events between now and that date will determine not only whether this specific war ends, but what kind of Middle East emerges from it. 3 scenarios, each more serious than the last. In the first, America responds to the Iranian threat with a formal and direct counter-declaration, specifying what it will do if Iran acts against Saudi, Emirati, or Qatari ports. This signals that Washington has chosen escalation, that it is betting that the blockade plus military pressure will force Iran to the table before April 21st. Neither side can back down without losing face. In the second, America remains silent on the threat to the ports while pursuing secret behind-the-scenes talks, which is the current pattern. The cost is the growing uncertainty among Gulf allies. If Saudi Arabia and the Emirates begin making separate deals with Iran to protect their own ports, the American coalition fragments. The blockade becomes ineffective. Iran wins at the diplomatic table what it did not win on the battlefield. In the third scenario, the Houthis resume operations in the Red Sea. 2 simultaneous choke points, the Gulf and Bab el-Mandeb. 30 to 40% of global maritime trade paralyzed at the same time, without modern precedent. None of these scenarios is a solution. All of them depend on a variable that has so far remained completely off the table. What America will do, specifically, regarding China's role. This morning, an Iranian general said that no port in the region will be safe, and America has not responded. But the real question isn't what Iran will do in the next 6 days. The question is what happens when a country learns, step by step on a ladder of confidence, exactly how far it can go before America decisively backs down. Iran closed Hormuz in February. America spent weeks trying to reopen it. It did not succeed completely. Iran kept the toll system running. It gave China and friendly nations permission to pass while blocking Western ships. America repeatedly threatened escalation. The blockade was not forced to open. Then, a sanctioned Chinese tanker sailed through the American blockade in less than 24 hours, and the U.S. military said that tanker was not in violation of the terms of the blockade. Iran watched this happen, and now it is threatening every port in the region. The system China has built around Iran, the oil payments, the shadow fleet, the arms pipeline, the diplomatic cover, was not created by this war. This war merely made it visible. And what Iran did this morning is what that system looks like when it is fully operational. 2 silences, 2 calculations, 6 days, and a ceasefire that was always fragile, held together by threads that Iran has just pulled very hard. Follow what America says, not on Truth Social but in State Department statements, in CENTCOM communiques, in the signals coming via Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt. And follow what China says, or doesn't say. Because China's silence on its own role in this conflict has been just as calculated as America's silence on this morning's Iranian threat. We'll be tracking this every day. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now. Because in the next 72 hours, something is going to happen. And when it does, you'll want to have followed every step of this ladder.